The next subtopics we are covering is the factors that affect nutrition on a bird. We have studied nutrition from the start. We now want to see what are the factors that would affect nutrition of a bird. The very first factor that affects the nutrition of a bird is the age. When I was doing formulation, I said that a day-old chick will require 20% protein, a growing bird will require 16% protein, a layer bird will require 16% protein. A chick will require about 1:1 of calcium, 4:1 in growers, and 6:1 in layers. It's because when the bird is growing from the chick, it needs a lot of protein to form the muscles, to form the tissues, to form the organs, so it will require a better nutrition. It's just like the way a child requires more nutritious food as compared to the human. So a child will be given highly proteinous food as compared to another. The same thing happens to the age of the bird. The smaller the bird, the more nutrition is going to be given, and the older the bird, the body doesn't need a lot of those nutrients. The other factor that would affect the nutrition of a bird is the housing. I said that there are systems in which our birds are kept. The house that you have built for your chicks or your chickens is going to determine how much food they are going to eat. If your birds will receive lighting from 4 a.m. in the morning and receive darkness at 3 p.m. in the evening, they will consume less feed. But if you allow the birds to have the 12 hours of lighting and 12 hours of darkness, with the increment when they grow a little bit older, the consumptions of the food will be determined by the type of a house you have. Also, the system in which you are keeping your bird. I should say the housing and the system that you are using. When I was teaching previously, I said about the 3 systems in which we are trying to do poultry farming. If your bird are on the cage, they will consume less feed because their mobility is limited. If your birds are on a deep litter, they will consume more food because they are walking around, so they are consuming more energy to move around. So the housing, the type of house that you give to your bird, the system under which you are putting your flock on will affect the nutrition of the bird. Birds in the cage require more calcium because they need more calcium because they are always studying. Birds in the deep litter or the free range or the semi-intensive, they will acquire less calcium because they can mobilize the calcium that you have given them. The other factor that would affect the nutrition of the bird is the ambient temperature or the surrounding temperature. Birds or even any animal will feed more during the cold season. Bird will feed very little during the hot seasons. Bird will feed very little when they have heat stress. So the surrounding temperatures will affect the nutrition of the bird. When it's very hot, the birds are not able to utilize a lot of energy. But when it's cold, the birds convert more of the energy to provide heat for the body. And again, so there's variation of the type of nutrients that are required during the hot and during the cold season. That's why I was saying that it is very important to know your area of location, how temperatures fluctuate, that you can be able to know the nutrition of your bird. You can maintain a certain formula for the whole of 365 days of the year. But if your temperatures are fluctuating, you need to keep changing the energy levels, the protein level, because if the heat is there, the birds are not able to break down the protein. They're not able to utilize the energy that you have. And that's the challenge that we have with the farmers today, because we are keeping our birds in areas, we are keeping our birds in very hot areas under very poor housing, and then we are not observing the nutrition. So you're very careful to know the house that you are keeping your bird, the system that you have, and the temperatures that surround you. Look, always observe. If your temperatures go down, then your birds will need more energy. If your temperatures are too high, you require to reduce the energy, because otherwise if you give a lot of energy during hot times, the birds get bored and they're not able to break that energy, and all that energy goes into waste. And if you want to check that during the very hot times, check the amount of uric acid, the white substance that you see on the feces. It increases because a lot of protein is wasted. It is not broken down. So it's very important to know your ambient temperature and how the surrounding is. The other factor that is going to affect the nutrition of your bird is the sex. At the beginning, when the chick is growing, from the chick growing stage to about 20 weeks, they will feed the same. But birds that are bred for breeding, we require a highly nutritious food, because we require them to give us good hatchability eggs and strong eggs to give stronger chicks. So if you're keeping kienyeji birds for breeding, ensure that you give them a high nutritious feed. If you're doing hatching, that you can get good quality eggs and hatchable eggs. If your birds are not fed properly, the male is not strong to fertilize the 10 female that he's given. So make sure that if you have the males should be fed on a highly nutritious food for them to produce enough sperms to give to those females, that you don't have eggs that are not hatching. Sometimes I hear farmers telling me that their eggs are hatching 50%. It's because maybe the male was not strong enough. He wasn't given enough food. So when it comes now to fertilization, he was not able to produce enough sperm for that purpose. So nutrition is also supposed to be observed where sex is concerned. But during the stage of chicks, growing stage, the feed does not matter. But once the maturity has been reached, observe the sex of the birds. The other factor that would affect the nutrition of the bird is the purpose. Maybe as to say the focus. Sometimes when I listen to the farmers, they tell me they just started farming because they saw their neighbor having chickens and they were doing well. So they don't even know why they kept the birds. They just bought the birds. So if you are keeping birds for meat, you should provide them with a highly proteinous food for the processing of the muscles, the carcass formation. If you are keeping birds for laying, you should give them a formula that is able to give eggs. If you are keeping birds for leisure, then you just give them enough food that you can be seeing them around. Maybe the geese, the goose, they just get for sometimes for leisure. So it depends on the purpose. Why are you farming? Are you farming economically, or are you farming for just because people are farming? So the purpose and which are you keeping the birds for? If you're keeping the birds for meat, ensure that they have enough energy, they have enough protein, under good ambient temperature, under good housing, and you have determined that a broiler is supposed to reach maturity at 35 weeks. A layer is supposed to start laying for you at 16 weeks. So you should observe the reason why you are doing farming. So basically, these are the fact. Also, the other factor that would affect the nutrition of the bird is the availability of water. I said water is one of the nutritional components when I was talking about the composition of the nutrients that are supposed to be in a feed. Water, if you are living in the coastal regions where there is salty water, or we are using the borehole, remember that that salt water will contribute to a percentage of the salt. So it is very important that you know the amount of salt that is contained in the water that you have, so that when you are formulating your food, you will not increase a lot of sodium chloride. So it is very important that you know what water you have. Actually, the best water is the fresh water that a human being is able to drink. So if you have your water that is salty, always take it to the lab, have it analyzed, see the amount of sodium chloride that you have. From the percent that you have, you can know what percent to put in the feed. I said you are not supposed to put more than 0.5% of salt in the feed. And the salt that we are using is the iodized salt. Do not use Magadi salt as a source of sodium chloride for our birds. People use it, but doesn't really have any nutrition value. So for good nutrition, the birds are supposed to be given fresh, clean water like the one that any human being may be comfortable to drink.